Today in the EU, getting Europe's rail system back on track. Railways are the most environmentally sustainable mode of transport compared to cars or planes. Yet, they remain chronically underfunded and underdeveloped in Europe, as the EU railway system is often described as a patchwork rather than a seamless network. But what are the hurdles railways face in becoming the greener choice, and what are the EU institutions doing to overcome them? Hello and welcome, I'm Nicoletta Ionta, and this is Today in the EU. High prices, complex booking systems, and a lack of cross-border coordination are just some of the problems making it harder for Europeans to consider trains a reliable and safe option. Today, I invited in the studio Barbara Machado, covering transport for the Energy and Environment Hub here at Euractiv, to discuss the current state of EU railways, their issues, and the proposals aimed at addressing them. Hello, Barbara. Welcome to the studio.
Hello.
Barbara, you cover transport here at Euractiv. Tell us, what are the main problems currently affecting European railways?
For many Europeans, trains are not really an option. There's more than one reason in reality. So first, as you also mentioned, European railways are severely fragmented. And this is mostly because each member state developed their own system, their own rules. So they have their infrastructure, and this was not developed thinking about what the neighbors are doing and about this interconnection.
So you're saying that there is an obvious problem when it comes to cross-border connections, right?
Exactly. That is a big issue. And although the EU has been trying to fix this by approving the same, for example, technical specifications that would increase interoperability a lot, the truth is that member states are lagging behind on their adoption. There are rules there, but on this aspect, there's still a lot to be done on the side of the member states. Mm-hmm. But also, there are big discrepancies between member states. Some have better infrastructures than others. There's a severe lack of connections between European cities.
And how has investments in infrastructure differed between railways and other modes of transport in Europe over the past decades?
There has been more focus in roads, significantly more investment. So according to some OECD data, the total amount of money invested in rail in the EU between 2000 and 2019 was 843 billion, where 1,341 billion was given to roads infrastructure. And actually, according to a recent report by the EU's European Railway Agency, the road network occupies as much land as half of Portugal at the moment, a much larger scale than we see for the railway network. So there wasn't that much investment in rail.
Of course, the lack of investment has an effect on passengers. I'm curious to know, what are the hurdles passengers are facing when booking a trip?
So here, the problem is really that from different countries, you can't book a trip in one platform. So you always have to book from two different train operators. So if you want to go from France to Spain, for example, you have to buy two different tickets. And then if the first gets delayed and you lose your connection, the second operator won't give you any compensation. And then we also have the issue of prices. Many train trips are still very expensive and way more expensive than flights. And this is due to, first, because they have a monopoly. And of course, when you don't have competition, the prices for consumers are higher. They don't really have a choice. But rail associations also defend that they have high costs, high fixed costs, and that there is some unfairness in the regulatory framework because they complain that aviation benefits from tax exemptions and that for rail this is not the case, that they have high VAT to pay. So first, lack of connections, fragmentation, but also the prices are not the most attractive.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, let's say I want to escape Brussels, a feeling that many are probably having at this point in August, and I want to go from here to Croatia to spend my last days of vacation. To get there, I will have to, first of all, keep in mind that I would need to make many transfers, and then I will have to navigate several national train ticket platforms, right?
Exactly. You would have to see all the options of the different segments of the route you want to take, and buy one ticket in each operator. And typically, this can last a long time.
Also, when we were discussing our holiday plans, you mentioned something that I found very interesting about your journey back to Portugal, as it seems that going by train is not so easy as I initially thought.
So I would love to go by train to Lisbon, but here is the current situation. If I wanted to do Brussels-Lisbon, first I would have to do Brussels-Madrid.
Okay.
This would be the only options. This would include 2 transfers, around 17 hours, leaving early in the morning, arriving almost at midnight.
Okay.
And if I booked now, then it would be around 300 euros, and there are even no connections every day.
Okay.
And then there's the next step, which is doing Madrid, Lisbon. That is my final destination. And then I could only take a train in the next morning, close to 9 a.m. and arriving around 5 p.m. And there would also be some transfers. So in total, this leaves me with 2 days of train travels with different operators.
So, and what about just taking a flight? How easy would that be?
It's very easy because you have different operators. It takes 2 hours and 50.
But that's not the greener.
Of course,
option.
It's not the greener. I mean, I really like to travel by train, so I would like to take the train. I think it's more comfortable. You can work, you can do different things. But yes, for me, that really entails 2 days of traveling.
Have you institutions made any efforts to promote trains as the greener and better option?
As I mentioned before, on interoperability, there are common rules that should be adopted by member states, and that has been very slow. But at the same time, the Commission has a mobility strategy where it has certain targets, such as by 2030, it aims to double high-speed rail traffic across Europe. But also we have the Trans-European Transport Network legislation that really aims to create a multimodal, more efficient transport infrastructure across Europe. It's not just focused on rail. So we have certain goals for rail, such as increasing speed and increasing the deployment also of the technical rules, increase airport connectivity, so connect major airports with a long-distance rail, and also promoting sustainable plans. This entered into force recently, and we still have to see the implementation of this regulation.
In terms of actions being taken now, it is true that the new Commission political guidelines for the next mandate include a proposal for a new regulation to single out some of these issues, especially for single ticketing, in an effort to make it easier for EU citizens to travel between countries. Can you explain it to us? What does that include?
Indeed, Ursula von der Leyen announced the proposal of single digital booking and ticketing regulation, which would allow Europeans to buy one ticket on one single platform for their entire trip and ensure passenger rights. And it appears that this is only for rail, that this aims to fix cross-border train trips. But the truth is there was something proposed before that is similar.
What kind of proposal are you referring to?
So that was the EU's multimodal digital mobility services regulation that was announced in 2021. And it also aimed to give the possibility of buying one single ticket to be able to travel across different countries. But the difference here is that this proposal focuses on different transport modes, so not just rail. And is not only ticket booking, but you could also do a comparison of travel routes, travel options. So here you would have all transport modes, all operators.
And why wasn't it approved in the end?
So the proposal was under public consultation in the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. But in the end, it didn't pass the regulatory scrutiny board.
How come?
We reached out to the Commission to know a bit more on this, but they told us that they can't comment on their internal work. We spoke with Transport and Environment, and they told us that Transport Commissioner Valian delayed the publication to make it impossible to be adopted before the end of the parliamentary term, and that the proposal was already, that it lacked a lot of ambition, that there was a lot of lobbying by the rail operators to not allow for an independent booking platform to sell the tickets. Because what would be the aim here would be to create a platform that would allow for the reselling of tickets from different operators.
That means people will be able to compare prices more effectively, right? And I am assuming that this would lead to a loss in profits for many companies.
Exactly. That appears to be the reason behind the lobbying of rail operators, the fear of losing the revenues of selling the tickets. But the truth is that in the end, this would increase the attractiveness of rail. So it could ultimately increase the revenues. But these are the reasons that we believe led to the watering down of the proposal. But here we also spoke with the Commission to know a bit more on the state of situation of this file. They told us that this is a very complex file, requires a lot of technical work, and will continue throughout this mandate.
It's striking to know that, according to polls, Europeans would be interested in choosing trains as their means of transport if they had a good price option. Polls also show that 2 out of 3 Europeans would support a ban on short flights. We saw something similar happen in France last year. So why are we making it so difficult for Europeans to take trains?
So at the moment, as we talked about a bit, reaching different countries by trains requires a very long trip, requires expensive tickets, and there's no guarantees between the connections. So it's very understandable that people fear a bit choosing this option. Also, there is this lack of ambition from the member states' side to make railways more attractive to member states, because there's also a limit to what the EU can do. Member states do have to make this a priority as well and invest more on infrastructure, work for the implementation of all the rules, because there are speed rules, there are signaling rules. It's not just a matter of infrastructure. There's a whole package of things that if it's not common between the EU, it won't allow for the connectivity between railways.
How can we make trains more appealing? What's your take on this?
So in my view, first of all, it has to be a priority. Mm-hmm. And I believe so far it wasn't. Even the plans, the strategies that were put forward for rail, it was always connected to other goals such as the European Green Deal, which of course has merits. But in the end, in my view, there's not a clear plan for rail. And there's also not, although the European Union has rules and has proposals, there's no push to make member states really act on this. So until that happens, until rail is a priority, I think it will be hard to overcome its shortcomings. But also there needs to be more cooperation between operators and make them understand that they will benefit from working together.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm Nicoletta Ionta, and this was Euractiv's Today in the EU podcast. Visit Euractiv to stay on top of the latest news, sign up for our podcast newsletter, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you can find us on all streaming platforms. And please make sure to leave a comment or a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your reviews really help us to spread the word on our work. This episode was produced by Miriam Sante Tejada and me. Thank you for listening, and we will be back tomorrow. As part of our commitment to accuracy, inclusion, and transparency, Euractiv is part of the Trust Project.